Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with Rosie Gilmoss, and I am delighted to bring for you a male guest. Welcome, David.
Hi. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for joining us. That's okay. So this is David Kelly. He is joining us today to talk about his story, to tell us how his late wife Beverly died, and she died young, didn't she? She was 48.
48, yeah.
Yeah. And from colorectal cancer. So I think there's going to be some similarities when we talk to John's late wife, Sarah, which will be really interesting when John and I kind of go through the episode in Wash-Up. So as always, David, I mean, thank you for coming on once again. And you have been a supporter of ours from the beginning. You have championed what we're doing. And you messaged me, didn't you, and said, "Did I want to reschedule the interview because I've spoken about having to cancel a few things." I felt really strongly that I did not want to cancel you because you've been there from the beginning. So I'm delighted to get the opportunity to hear your story today, and I imagine our listeners will be too. So when you're ready, just tell us your story.
Yeah, no, I mean it's nice to be here after hearing so many episodes. I guess a little bit unusual to be on the other side of the microphone, as it were.
I know it is. It's very strange, isn't it?
So, I mean, Bev and I met in 2002, and I guess it was quite unusual at the time because we met through internet dating long before. I guess internet dating was much of a trend. Yeah, oh yeah. So we basically met. We were both on that dating site and connected up. And yeah, back in 2002. So I guess romance blossomed. And we were a success, I guess. I mean, so many friends had sort of said, "Oh, why do you want to do that?" Whatever, and we're very skeptical about it. But we met that way and fell in love.
I think that's quite sweet. I used to work with a guy who met through Guardian Soulmates, which I thought I've never actually met anybody that met through the ads in a paper. I thought that was quite sweet too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess it was definitely long before it became more of a trend. But yeah, from that, I mean, strangely enough, we did wonder if we'd ever cross paths because where I was living at the time, in Watford, she had previously lived in that street, and where she was living now, when I met her, I'd previously been living in that street in Watford. So we wondered if we'd sort of somehow cross paths.
I'm going to quickly just say, Watford, I grew up in St Albans.
Ah, yes. Yeah, not that far.
Yeah, that's my hometown. I used to go to Destiny nightclub in Watford on the bus back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
But your accent is not a Watford accent, is it?
No. I'm originally from Belfast. So
I thought I've got a good friend who listens to the podcast. Hello, Julia, who's from Belfast, and I thought I recognised that. So when you said Watford, I was quite surprised.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've lived longer in Watford than I have actually lived in Belfast. I left Belfast back in '94 when I was 23. Yeah.
I think it's nice you kept the accent, though. It's a nice accent.
Yeah.
Sorry, completely digressing. So you were telling me that you and Bev had lived twice on the same streets as each other without knowing, and then met through internet dating.
And then we met through that, yeah. So it was
serendipity, I think that is.
If we'd crossed paths without knowing each other. But yeah.
So you guys, sorry, you go on.
No, so I guess settled down. Bev already had a sort of a daughter, so Gemma, my stepdaughter. She was about 10 at the time when I met Bev, and I guess then we sort of lived together, got married. A few years later, had a son, Luke, and I guess everything seems normal, for want of a better way of saying it.
I'm smiling because I'm hearing you describe this, and it's so common, isn't it, that you have this, in inverted commas, just really lovely normal life. You're just building a life together, going through, the normal trials and tribulations, and living your lives. And then the fact that you're here indicates that it didn't pan out quite as expected.
Yeah, let me see, going back to 2014, we came back from a trip from Belfast, gone back home to see family, and um, she started sort of passing some blood in her stools. Went to the
Mm.
doctor. He said, "Oh, it's probably I guess sort of piles, something like that, or whatever," and sort of give her
Mm.
some stuff for that. Um, and I guess really what happened then was there was a series of times that she went back and forward, what he was sort of thinking it was and giving her. It didn't sort of get any better, and eventually
Yeah.
then I think it was sort of late that sort of December. I think sort of early January. Then she was referred to a specialist. Um, and I guess there was a little bit sort of delay in sort of trying to get appointments, whatever. I think it was March then 2016 when actually we went in to they'd sort of done a biopsy or whatever. We went in for
Mm.
the follow up from that, and that's when we find out she had cancer, which was totally out of the blue. It was something we
This
were
is
not
what I was going
prepared
to
for.
ask you is, yeah, because in the world that we inhabit now, something like that, you'd be, oh my God, I've got cancer, wouldn't you? Because we live in that world now where catastrophe happens. But before your life has been blighted in the way that it has by, by, by tragedy, your mind doesn't instantly go there. So
Hmm.
were you thinking this is, a gastric issue or something that can be cured? And then presumably were you together in the doctor's office and you get that
We were
bombshell?
together, and the strange thing was the consultant was he was talking away, and we sort of said, so, hold on, are you saying it's cancer? It was like, because it wasn't clear to us, but he hadn't used the
Oh my
word.
goodness.
And he said, oh yes, it's cancerous, this growth. And I was like,
Oh
we
my
were
goodness.
just floored. And I mean, we sort of left, and um, I guess we were just sort of totally numb, totally in shock. And especially, I mean, she was young, so it was not something that was
Yeah.
on your radar to look out for. She was in good health
This
and
is what I
whatever.
mean. It's not something. And actually, even with Sarah, John's late wife, she had the genetic predisposition to bowel cancer, and they
Hmm.
still assumed it was. Oh God, my brain's gone. The vomiting illness that
Or
no,
norovirus.
it's gone. Norovirus. Thank you. And so yes, in people who are young and physically well, it's so often missed.
Yeah, and of course, and I suppose at that stage, I mean, if you think it was sort of September, she had um, started sort of having symptoms, and of course, this is now March, the following year. So there had been that period of time, and
Oh
as it was, it was diagnosed. I think it was stage 3B. I think sort of slightly later. In stage 3, it was actually diagnosed that when we got that diagnosis.
oh my
Which is
goodness.
like, okay. Um, so yeah, I
And
mean
for
that was a
what does
difficult.
that mean? What does 3B mean? Does that mean it's not quite
So I
end,
guess
but
the
it's not
stage 4 is sort of
brilliant?
is terminal. Stage 3, I guess, is it's sort of more fully developed, and
Hmm.
but it's still treatable, um, and I
So there
guess
was still a little bit of hope at this point.
yeah, no, I mean I mean there was issues to sort of to get through because there was I guess you had to have some surgery initially. So she had to get a
Hmm.
stoma fitted. So
Yeah.
that was a challenge to sort of to get around that. And of course, the thing is you're told something like that, we all want treatment to start immediately,
Of
and
course.
things to get going. But of course, um, the system runs at its rate, and you have. I remember there was like sort of all these MDT meetings, there's multidisciplinary meetings in the
Hmm.
NHS, and sort of they have to take that case to that team and sort of have a discussion what way they're going to do this, and of course she's in pain, and we're waiting for things to happen. So I guess there was, initially some surgery that took some time for that to be done. And then we had the meeting with the oncologist who were talking through the sort of the options of what they were going to do. And so, I mean, it probably wasn't until maybe, I think the operation was sort of April. It was then sort of about June, before she started chemo. And of course, for both of us, we're thinking she's still in a lot of pain, and we both know this thing's growing inside, and nothing's being done, but we can only go at the rate that the system goes at. So
Do you know, I've gone all I talk about the goosebumps. That's given me all the goosebumps then, because the feeling of impotence that sorry, I use that word, but a man should I?
Yeah.
But that kind of powerlessness and not being able to save her or help her or push this thing forward, and the frustration and like I say, not being able to help the woman that you love. It must have been terrifying for you as well as for her. Can I ask, just sorry I interrupt a little bit, just quickly. I just want to ask about Luke, because he would have been quite young then, wouldn't he? And Gemma,
So
of course, she would have been.
Luke was 9, I guess, when we got the diagnosis. And sorry.
It's all right. I was just really sorry. I was just thinking aloud, really, as you're talking. Is it how the vocabulary that you would use with a 9-year-old to explain what's happening, and because they're aware of being able to understand it, and it must have been very frightening.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years prior, my dad had died of cancer, and that was a very short. I mean, that was he died of liver cancer. So, I mean, that was in a very short time frame. That was from feeling perfectly fine one day, maybe just a bit lethargic, and sort of, I think it was in about 4 weeks from being diagnosed that he sort of may have died. So, Luke had already had, experience. He was 6 at that time. So, we talked about cancer. We, talked about, I guess it's best in the language, because children can understand as best they can. They can understand a lot of information if you put it in the right words and context, and sort of trying to sort of give them a language that they can understand. So for Luke, it was a case of, right, let's try and communicate that to him. Obviously, when it came around to them, when Bev got cancer, it was trying to explain to him, okay, cancer is this one word, but actually it can mean slightly different things, and depending what type of cancer it is,
it
and
sometimes
whatever.
Can be almost. I mean, it's negative if they've been exposed to any sort of cancer before. But yes, so obviously Holly's mum died of cancer, and then her granddad also died of cancer. So we find that if we have to tell her that anybody that she knows has got cancer, it has to be handled very carefully, because the only people that she's known who've had it have died.
Yeah.
And you don't, and obviously not everybody does. And it's really, it's very difficult to manage their expectations of what might happen. And of course, you guys didn't actually know either, which doesn't help matters.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess with Luke, I mean, I was very aware, right? Okay, his association with cancer at that point, after that first experience, was death. So for him then, and sort of, saying about Bev's cancer, it was just sort of, this is a different type of cancer. The oncologist that, sort of said that it's treatable, that they're going to do these things, and just to try and be open and honest with him, and just so that we were on a treatment plan that was, at that stage anyway, it was curative. And so we just, needed to keep conversations open and honest with him, and as best possible, take what we would learn from the oncologist, talk about it, what we were going to do, and then make it into something that he could understand and be reassured
sort of digestible bits of information. Yeah. And actually, I will, for the listeners, just clarify that you do work for a charity called Grief Encounter, don't you, as a family liaison officer and volunteer with Cruse, which you did prior to Bev's death as well.
Yeah.
So you do have experience of working with bereaved children, and I imagine that was, or people, I suppose, bereaved people, and I imagine that was very helpful kind of bag of tools to be able to utilize, but still very different when it's your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is, um, I can appreciate, that from that, you need to be honest as the trusted figure that, a child has. You need to be honest with them, and not try and sort of, uh, a lot of people sort of try and protect them by sort of, particularly say with other bereavements like sort of suicide and stuff like that, that you
Mm.
want to try and protect them from being aware of those things. But
The brutality.
yeah, but as a trusted figure, I needed to be honest with Luke, and give him as much information as I could, and sort of try and answer those questions. And if I felt, or Beth felt uncertain about something, then we would say that we were uncertain, or
Yeah.
we didn't know. There were times that sort of we would come back
Mhm.
from appointments and that, and he knew we were going for appointments, and we'd give him the update that we had from the oncologist. But also, if he asked a question and we weren't sure, we would say we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't know, or I don't know, is a perfectly valid answer. And
Hmm.
it's something that I've realized as I've got older that you can just say, I don't know. I can find out for you, but I don't know. And I mean, I actually, Cruise was one of the sites that I came across when I was looking for how to tell my children. And the information does say be honest, but it does feel so brutal to have to say the words your dad or your mum is dead, and you want to soften it, you want to make it more palatable, but actually you have, like you said it, yeah, and I love this term as the trusted figure. I think that's a really nice term. I've not heard that used in this context before. And as the trusted figure, you need to be honest, and you do, because um, children are very intuitive.
Mhm. Yeah, and the difficulty is that if you're not, honest, or if there's a story that you create when the child is
Oh, like the
older.
police coming to the door when I said that they were there because of the dog. I panicked, and
Yeah.
my eldest. It took years of unpicking. Excuse me, because I'd lied to him, I'd deceived him, but in that moment, I had no idea what the fuck to say.
Hmm.
But yeah, we worked it out. But yeah, I'm now apart from the odd little white lie about the ice cream ban and things, I do try and really be honest with my kids, because they see me and John, processing our grief, and sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's ugly,
Yeah.
and it's important they see all that kind of all the, what am I thinking? All the bits of grief, I suppose. And I
Absolutely.
do
Yeah.
protect. I had and did protect them from the real howling, wailing, head in the laundry basket stuff, because that would be distressing for them. But
Hmm.
I think it's important they see you cry and see you processing pain, because then they know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're sort of skipping forward. Say, I suppose after Bev had
Yes,
died,
sorry,
but for me,
I took you off on a tangent. How
no.
unlike me.
But for me, I mean, it was important that sort of I modeled what good grief looked like for him.
Yes,
So to express all emotions, the full range of emotions, and to for him
that's
to
what I
sort
was
of
looking for.
see me that what if, that it was okay to cry, that there would be days when I would feel low and stuff like that. So if I modeled a good behavior to him, then it showed him, okay, that he's okay to show all emotions. And I guess particularly, I suppose, with boys, if you look at sort of
Do you know, I was just
stereotypical,
thinking that.
yeah, it just with stereotypical,
Yeah,
behaviors, is that sort of, oh no, that crying is a valid emotion. And
yeah,
I want him to be able to express the full range of emotions.
yeah, yeah. And John will have a cry sometimes, and they see that, and I think that is important, because we still live in a society where men are told to push down their emotions and man up. And things are changing, but I think in your situation where you have two males grieving, for you to, as you say, model the good grief behaviours, must have been incredibly valuable, and I hope help the process somewhat. But you're right, we have jumped ahead. So would you take me back into where you're going through this kind of treatment and this uncertainty and the sort of no man's land that you're in? Just tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about this and how the impact on you and Bev.
So yeah, I mean, Bev initially, when she started, sort of, she had some rounds of chemo and then sort of had radiotherapy. It seemed good. She was in less pain. She was more mobile, because I guess what had happened was that she'd become pretty much sort of bedridden because of the discomfort. So I was basically sort of trying to sort of work remotely, with the company I was working for at the time, and still trying to do that while sort of care for her and, make sure, my son, I mean, Gemma, had just moved out of the house, shortly before Bev had got died. So she'd flown the coop, or not, sorry, before Bev got diagnosed, I should say. She'd flown the coop. So it was just three of us at that point. And I guess for me, it was very important, that he got to spend a lot of time with mom, so I was just sort of doing all the stuff that needed to be done, and giving them as much time together. As much as I knew she was on a treatment plan, I guess there was always that thing in the back of the head, what if things don't work out or whatever? And I just wanted him to make sure he'd have as much time as possible. So but it was good. Treatment seemed to work. She was on less pain meds. You didn't have to take as much, morphine and stuff like that. And
because that can make them very different as well. So you're not and very sleepy and lethargic. So sorry, I jumped in quickly, but the pain and the morphine, this is such a big factor of terminal illness or I shouldn't say terminal because the point you didn't know, but of painful. What's the word I'm looking for, David? You're good at words. Sort of long-term debilitating illness. There we go. Is the amount of pain relief you have to take, which then in turn causes other problems and can create personality changes. So it must be nice to have her back a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, so certainly with I guess with morphine at higher dosage rates, you can hallucinate. I mean, later on, I do remember when she was on sort of high doses of morphine that she did say sometimes there was this woman that she would see.
I think Sarah saw chickens.
Yeah, never got to the bottom of it, but it was just this woman. She didn't like her, but she'd sort of sometimes see her. But yeah, I mean, it was we were able to sort of do some stuff, sort of go out and, I mean, she had to use a walking stick, but she was able to get out and sort of be mobile. So it all seemed good. And then I guess the first bump in the road was probably around about October, November in 2015, when so the chemotherapy, radiotherapy had finished at that point. And then one morning she woke up and she said she couldn't feel her fingertips. And then basically it progressed from sort of numbness in her hands, was in her feet. And that's basically when we found out that she had developed peripheral neuropathy as a result of the chemotherapy. It was one of those things that...
Can you just tell me what that is?
So basically...
Would you just tell me what that is?
Yeah, so what happens is with chemo drugs are sort of effectively, they're toxins, they're poisons. And as well as obviously killing the cancer cells, they can cause damage to your normal nerve cells. And so peripheral neuropathy basically causes damages to your nerves. So for her, she was so sensitive, as it were, to the chemo drugs that actually caused nerve damage in her fingers, in her hands, and in her feet. I guess from the knee down, she couldn't really feel very much, and in her hands, she couldn't feel very much. It was one of those things. It's briefly mentioned, when you're talking about, oh yes, the chemo drugs and stuff like that. But it was sort of like, don't worry about that, blah blah blah. And of course, well, I want her to be treated. We want the treatment to work, so, but we just go with that. And then of course, it's like, oh right, this is the consequence that we had from that. So that was.
And is it permanent?
Well, They said it could be permanent. It did get a little bit better. It sort of it took sort of several months for things to improve. I mean, I guess the thing, one of the things that sort of bothered me with it was that we used to. I mean, we used to hold hands all the time, out for a walk and stuff like that. Since we met, that was always our thing, and she couldn't hold my hand anymore in the way that she'd held it previously, and because it just she said it felt funny, so it was like sort of, it was strange. That was like sort of, it was a really sort of a small thing, but it sort of meant a lot to me that it was just something that we lost
Yeah.
as a result of that. She could only sort of hold, I guess my hand in a certain way, which didn't feel natural because of the funny sensation it caused for her. However, it did get a little bit better. I mean, walking was a problem as well because she said it was like trying to walk on it was like she was in
Is that
cotton
pins
wool.
and needles?
Well, for her, she said it was like as if she had sort of cotton wool slippers on and she was walking on um, sheep's backs. That it was just that sort of spongy, sort of foamy, sort of soft. That was
Yeah.
basically why she described walking. It just didn't feel quite right for her. Um,
Oh, how
so
unsettling for you both.
yeah, so I mean that. I guess it took a few months for that to sort of get a little bit better, but it never sort of fully went away. And then really, I guess, we went into, so we come to the end of the year, we went into 2016. We were quite hopeful. We've done all this treatment, and okay, hey, this peripheral neuropathy thing has happened, but it seems to be getting a bit better. But we know from the scan, that the last scan that we had, tumor was shrinking, and they sort of said, with the residual effects of the radiotherapy, it should be sort of gone, and we'll come back for a scan in early January. So I
So
mean,
this is all sounding really positive.
yeah. But I mean, I guess, and like many other people going through cancer treatment, there's that that tension builds up again when you come through to the next scan, and I guess early January, then we went in for that scan, and that's basically when we got the news that actually they weren't quite sure if it was the same lump that had grown or whether it was a new lump had grown, but it basically it was back as it were. And the difficulty we had at that point was that they couldn't use the same chemo drugs because of this peripheral neuropathy. They said they couldn't give the same drug, and again because it was going to cause more damage, and eventually it would make her lose her eyesight, her hearing, and things like that.
Oh.
Things like that, because it was causing damage to her nerves. So there was a way of right, okay, can we get another alternative drug? That took time for them to decide, if that was possible. And they
this is
did
all tick, 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 tick,
tick,
time
tick,
going
yeah,
by,
yeah.
isn't it? I can picture grains of sand.
And meanwhile, her pain's sort of going back up again now. We had to temporarily supposed to check her into the local hospice for pain management. And I remember when the Macmillan nurse said about going to the hospice, of course, that was like, what? Whoa, hold on, because
Yeah, we didn't think we were here. Yeah.
It's like that, that's not where we are. And she said, no, like they do pain management.
Yeah, it's an escalation, isn't it?
Yeah. So she went into the hospice. That was a really good experience. Great people in the hospice. Helped to get into a new sort of pain management, sort of drug program, and sort of, she came out of that feeling better. And we find out then that, that they were going to sort of trying to give her some treatment then with this alternative drug. And I suppose we had all hope that was going to work. Unfortunately, I guess, skip forward, the drug wasn't as effective, wasn't working. Her pain was increasing, and I mean, I was probably much like many other people here at carers at this point. I've got her regime of drugs this time at that time. And
you've become a cancer specialist at this point, haven't you?
Yeah, and pain's increasing. She's now moved on to fentanyl. I'm having to sort of give that for breakthrough pain and stuff like that. So, all the signs are sort of going south, as it were. And I guess eventually, she ended up sort of going. Well, actually, I suppose one thing I remember was that she had one Mother's Day that year. So we're going into March 2016.
March.
The day after that, She actually had I thought she was having a stroke at the time. She was having a sort of a seizure one morning. I'm just trying to get Luke off, ready for school. And she just sort of had this funny turn, and I thought it was a stroke, called an ambulance. We got them out. They sort of, got her into the hospital. And I think it was some kind of reaction to, there was a new drug that she'd been given, and we stopped giving her that drug. And that sort of seemed to resolve that. But I guess this is one of these things, like they're sort of saying, oh, maybe the cancer spread to her brain now and stuff like that. And it's all these other things that keep coming out that you sort of think, what more have we got to deal with here?
It just it's like that every time you stand up, you're just getting a smack back down.
Yeah, and then I guess what gradually what seemed to happen, she was having problems sort of passing water, so they sort of decided to insert a catheter, and I guess it came to a point where that needed to be changed, and unfortunately at that point the pain was just so much that she was actually admitted into the ward where we got the cancer treatment from. The hospital that we got her from. They had a cancer ward there, so we admitted her into that ward because they just wanted to do some more checks or whatever. And I guess then we find out that well, I say I guess, I suppose there's no guessing about it. We basically find out that there's nothing more we can do. The sort of the cancer has spread further, and we're out of options. I'm not one. I haven't been sort of one person who gets sort of angry as such, whatever. But I did get angry in a moment there, because while she was in that ward, that hospital ward. So this is probably April in 2016. I was sorting my son out for school, and then sort of trying to go down to the hospital ward and sort of spend time with her. And the consultant, for some reason, and I've never understand his logic in doing this, but decided to tell her when she was by herself that there was nothing more that they could do for her.
When she was by herself.
But she was by herself.
That's really, oh no.
I mean, I was on my way to the hospital at that point. Literally, it's about a 50-minute drive from where we live, so I was just on my way. And I got a call from her to say that the consultant had just been, he'd came in to see her before he started his rounds in the morning, and had just told her that there was nothing more that they could do. And I to this day, I do not understand his logic for doing such a thing, with not just waiting 5-10 more minutes till I got there. So yeah.
And this is a young woman. This is a mother. This is a woman who I can't believe that they did that to. I feel really, really sorry for Bev right now, because to be told that sort of news. I know when John told Sarah, he asked for her drugs to be scaled back so that he could tell her while she was sort of a little bit more aware. And it was one of the most difficult things he's ever done. Of course it was. But he wanted to be the person that was there to do it and be there when, with this information. So to have, throughout your story, I'm hearing a lot of stolen things from you. Lots of things are being taken from you. The fact that you can't hold your wife's hand in the same way, the fact that you weren't even able to be present when she was told that her life was ending, like that's something that you can't get back. And yeah, that does feel really cruel, actually. And whoever that doctor is, I hope he's been at his wrists.
I've never understood. I mean, I guess it was one thing that just sticks out in my mind is sort of, I know everybody sort of says about sort of, the NHS and stuff like that, and it's the individuals who make the difference, but I never understood why he decided to do that. It was just so, to me, it's like, it's just
no compassion
so no compassion, whatsoever. So really at that point, it was a case of right. Well, I want to get her out of here because it was in. We were in a general ward, So we are now facing this, and it's like I haven't even got it. We haven't even got a private room or anything like that. So luckily enough, the Macmillan nurse who we'd had a good relationship with, she'd been away on holiday when all this sort of happened. As soon as she came back and I spoke to her, she said, right, let me get on to the local hospice and sort of try and get her back in. And so we managed to sort of get her back into to the hospice again. And I mean, that was what, May 2016. I was sort of the I was actually I remember it was the bank holiday weekend. Was actually then right. Okay, we've now got her into the hospice, and of course now we've got to tell Luke, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not an easy conversation to have.
It is, and it always will be the worst conversation that anybody, I think, ever has to do, is to tell a child that a parent has died or is going to die. And even seeing the emotion in your face now and hearing it in your voice, I can feel my own self going back into it and thinking how awful it was. And oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It gets me every time hearing this. I don't know.
And I mean, and
just
it's
so tragic.
I mean, even I guess with sort of with I guess my skills, knowledge, understanding, whatever. It's like there's still no easy way of saying this thing. I mean, I remember having a chat with the person in the hospice, and sort of who supported families, just sort of like, how do I approach this thing? I mean, it's like I don't know, and she said, like the stuff I said, just you got to be, be clear in your language. You got to be sort of honest, and that was a conversation. It was a difficult conversation, and then I guess with typical sort of, the way sort of children sort of deal with grief is like very intense in that moment, and after that, then it was like we were then having pizza and I'm watching a film, a few hours later.
I like to describe it as psychopath mode, because when I told my kids, well, the boys, because Tabby was too young, the initial noise, the awful kind of horror of what's happened, and then they were in their Harry Potter costumes playing with wands, and I was like, what? And it's only through talking to other widowed parents and doing this that I realised that that is an entirely normal reaction from a child. But I thought my kids were weird. I thought, why aren't they upset? This is their dad. But of course they were upset. They were devastated. But their little bodies and emotions didn't know how to express it, so they just carried on. Which is kind of heartbreaking, isn't it?
I mean, with kids, they sort of say, I guess the two metaphors are a bit like either muddy puddles, they jump into it and then they jump out, or it's like a tap, you turn it on and then you can turn it off. Whereas I guess as adults, we tend to hold on to things longer. We ruminate and whatever. I guess with kids, it's just that on off piece. But
yeah, and we carry a lot more of the weight, because you would have had some frustrations with the treatment and the time, and you, as I said earlier, you become a cancer expert, you become a medic in this time, and you're trying to protect the child or your child or children from all of this external noise, but still allow them to see that you're grieving and process their grief. It is a full-time job that you never signed up for, isn't it? This management of, and it's an enormous weight that's left on the person behind. And we see that time and time again, that people have just been so beaten down by cancer treatment, watching somebody suffer and deteriorate. And it leaves you very weary, I suppose, and drained.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's always this debate: sort of, is it better to have this, slow decline, or is it better that they go suddenly or whatever? I don't know, but I guess for us, for me, being in that hospice environment, she was already known by the some of the nurses who were there because we'd been there briefly before in February. Luke, also had a positive experience from when she had been in before, so he knew some of the staff. And we managed to have they had a family room in the local hospice, that thankfully was empty at the time, so we were able to stay there. We were just able to have that time, those last couple of weeks, with her in the hospice. And they as much as what was going on, wasn't pleasant. The atmosphere from the staff that they created, the engagement they had with Luke, and what he was able to do. He was able. There was a Wii machine, the sort of Nintendo Wii in there that he was able to play on, and I guess just do some normal sort of activities. I remember, one of the things that sort of Bev and Luke had always sort of done. She would make sort of cakes, cookies, and stuff like that, whatever. So he was into baking. The chef at the hospice found this out, so she got Luke in with the proper outfit and whatever to sort of help out in the kitchen and do cookies for the inpatients. So I mean, absolutely what they did, I can't thank them enough for. Just the support that
what
they
I'm
give
hearing
us.
is what you needed: compassion, and kindness. That's what I'm hearing in your voice, and it's what you need to be shown. And you're right, in a busy hospital ward, you don't get that. But most people I've spoken to have had nothing but positive. I mean, obviously, not like you say, it's not a positive experience because somebody's dying, but the compassion and the kindness and the way that you are included as a family enables you to have those really important moments with them at the end. And for Luke, that must be, obviously it's tainted with sadness, but to know that he was able to be with his mum, that must be really important for him.
Yeah, I mean,
you're right.
It's strange because we were talking about this because what's 7 years ago this May, and we were just sort of talking about what we remembered of that sort of last time. I mean, as it was at that time it was a Wednesday evening. We were all in the room, so there was my mom had come over from Belfast, so she was with us. There was Gemma was in the room at the time, and myself and Luke. And I mean, my mom had seen, had been present when my dad had passed away, so she'd noticed this difference in the breathing, which comes around, and she'd sort of said, like, I think it's, it's sort of going to be happening soon. So we were just all there around the bed, just holding her hand and talking away to her. And I remember, my mom sort of saying to Bev, "Look, it's okay to go," and stuff like that. And I remember, I'm not saying it out loud, but in my head, I'm thinking, "No, it's not okay. I don't want you to go.
No, it's not. No.
As much as I don't want you to be in pain, I don't want you to go. But yeah, I mean, you go through that.
Want to lose her.
You go through that thing, and I think the thing that Luke and I talking about it that we remembered was just that sensation of where you hear the breath, not the last breath, but almost like it's the penultimate breath. It's the one where, I guess getting graphic here, but you have that sort of deep inhale that they have, and then there's like a long pause, and you think, "Oh, is this it?" And then there's another breath. I think, "Oh, phew," and then hold on, there's another last breath, and you're waiting, and it's like, oh shit, that's it. And then, well, I think as John had said in his interview, there's that scream that you get from your child.
Yeah.
That's
it's a noise that haunts me to this day. And the poor, because even I'm thinking of even Gemma, because she can't have been terribly old, and to have
about 21, 22 at the time. Yeah.
So still, it's no age to lose your mother, is it? I find it really interesting that you had Luke there at the end, because it's a choice some people do and some people don't. I was never had the choice. So, and I personally think if they want to and the situation is appropriate, that it's good, because they don't feel that they've been excluded. However, sometimes children maybe don't want to go, or perhaps the parent is suffering so much that actually it would be distressing for them, or the age renders it sort of an inappropriate thing to do. But I think, yeah, I think being surrounded by the people that she loved, we talked about a good death, and
Mm.
we would all of us would want to be surrounded by the people that we love, telling us that we were loved. So I hope you take a little comfort from that, that you gave her a beautiful end, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was snatched away a little bit, somewhat, because she had been. So that was a Wednesday, I guess, really since sort of the sort of Sunday, sort of Monday, she'd just been on so much medication at that point that she just wasn't conscious. So I suppose there was uh, I guess there was no sort of proper goodbyes as it were, but obviously we've been having conversations sort of the sort of times before. Um, but it
Mm.
was, I guess it was peaceful, I suppose, is probably just with that atmosphere, that was in the hospice. And it's just a totally different atmosphere. I mean, I've gone back to it, um, to the hospice quite regularly, and you walk in and there's just as much as what happens there, there's just it's very tranquil, it's very sort of serene. It's just totally different from,
Mm.
say, the noise that you would have in a normal hospital. So I guess in that way it was just more peaceful surroundings, that we
Well, I've
got to
done a
say
bit of
goodbye in.
work for Holding on Letting Go, which is another bereavement charity. They are local to Kent, and they worked with Monty when he was little, and really helped him. And some of their weekend workshops are done at a Demelza hospice in Kent. And I have to say, I thought it was going to just feel so sad. And yes, there is a sadness, obviously, 'cause it's a children's hospice, but there's lots of games and toys and places that the family can be together. And you can see why the fear of going into a hospice must be immense, but how much calmer it is compared to a hospital, and how much more care they're able to have than you would be able to do at home. You couldn't look after them to that extent at home. Of course you couldn't. And so it seems that hospices have kind of created this kind of warm, compassionate environment for families to grieve in. And that very much is what's needed in this situation, because you don't want to say goodbye in a hospital ward.
Hmm. No, particularly, I mean, and that's why, when we got that information that it was terminal, I just wanted to get her out of that hospital ward, because
Yeah.
it wasn't a good experience. How could I have a conversation, with my son about what was happening in a ward where your privacy was through a
A
screen,
curtain.
curtain, and it's like,
Mm.
there's no privacy, no dignity, in something
No.
like that. So thankfully, when the Armit Mill nurse came back, she was getting us in there as quickly as she could. So, that way, then she was going to die, but she was, going to die in more um, peaceful
A bit more
surroundings,
comfort.
and more comfort. And you know what? In a place where actually the people knew her and would care
Yeah.
for her.
And cared. Mm. Yeah, it is important. So after she has died and you're sort of sitting in this room, and your Luke is obviously very, very distressed, and you guys have to go home together, and obviously you now are a solo parent, and you've obviously been doing the lion's share of the parenting because your wife's been very sick. So,
Hmm.
but the buck completely stops with you, doesn't it? There's no conversations about school choices, because at 10 you'd be thinking about secondary schools, and there's no you've got a teenager now, discussing, is it the right time for driving lessons, just having that other person to bounce ideas off, and suddenly you very quickly realize that it is just you. And it's things like my daughter taking her first steps and stuff. The only person that gives enough of the same amount of a crap about this is the other parent, and they're not here. And grandparents are wonderful and friends are wonderful, but you just think, I want them to see as well. Um, so what did life look like for the two of you, two musketeers?
Uh, it was, well, I mean, obviously, I was very sort of conscious, sort of. I'm now the only parent, so right. I, I've, I mean, I remember I suppose I was probably the more stricter parent. Bev was probably the more sort of lenient one. So for me, it's like, right, okay, I got to sort of try and find that middle ground now, and sort of I'm not going to be able to swing as lenient perhaps as you, because I still think there needs to be some structure, whatever. But I've got to change how I parent, and I've got to choose my battles, more
Yeah,
wisely, and sort
picking
of
your battles.
yeah, and just I guess when it comes sort of to grief and supporting him, I want to sort of do the best that I can, and then, but I guess I went through that phase of trying to be the perfect parent, and beating myself up for not being able to be the perfect parent. And then I realized, okay, I'm not. It's not going to do me any good. It's not going to do him any good to try and sort of strive for this perfection, which is unachievable. I've just got to be the good enough parent,
A good
and
parent. Yeah.
and I will get things wrong. If I get things wrong, then I say, oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, or whatever. And you know, I've just got to sort of roll with that. So I mean, there was a period, yeah, it was a bit rough. He, I think, like a lot of children, sort of, going through such an experience, sort of became a bit more insecure, a bit more nervous, anxious about things, and whatever. But we got through
Yeah, of
that
course.
phase, and I
Well,
guess
the worst
we've
things
become a
happen, doesn't
team.
it?
Well, yeah,
Because this
yeah,
is the thing, the worst, every children's book or Disney film, in order to describe a tragedy, they almost always have at least one dead parent, don't they? That's, this is how they kind of overcome adversity. So this thing that's been kind of paraded as the worst thing that can happen to a child happens. So yeah, they're going to be anxious. They're going to be terrified, because if that's happened, what else can happen? And I know that one of my children sort of struggles to form relationships a little bit, because you don't know the relationship. His dad just disappeared and ceased to exist. That's going to cause some um, attachment issues, I imagine. Um, and now, I mean, now he's 17, so you got a man in the house now, and that must be a
mm,
really different dynamic, because you got two blokes living together. And do you talk about Bev together, or is she's?
yeah,
I mean, the way you talk, I'm assuming that she's still very much a part of your life at home.
yeah. I mean, well, I guess you know, I mean, we have our sort of things that we do. We go out, on her birthday. Um, we always bring her up in conversations. I guess
Mm.
things that come up, whether sort of it's around sort of meals that or places that we'd go to that we used to do things together at. So yes, I mean it. We went through that phase where for a very long time, it was like it seemed like yesterday and also a long time ago at the same time, that she'd been alive. I guess, I mean, this summer, and I did sort of post something in the group about this sort of like 7 year itch I've talked about, where it just, there's a becoming that little bit uncomfortable now that actually certain things aren't as crystal clear, or retained as far as memories go now, because it has been that longer
Yes.
passage of times. And just, I guess everybody, maybe not everybody, a lot of people tend to think sort of like grief is at its worst when, you've had the bereavement and it sort of gets easier from then. And yeah, you have that primary loss, the loss of the person, and you have the secondary losses that go with it at the time. You sort of loss, maybe, security of identity, and things like
Yeah.
that. And
Best mate.
yeah, but you tend to think that all happens at the time. I suppose what I hadn't sort of considered as sort of right 7 years on, and I call it 7 years because it's just that uncomfortableness that I've now got in my grief, that actually
Mm.
there's almost like a new secondary loss, that some of those things I can't remember now, or
Yeah.
it's a bit fuzzy. It's almost like having a glove around a memory,
Yeah.
where I can't quite feel it as strong as before. And
I
we've
find that
talked about that.
when I go, oh,
No, look, and we talk
sorry,
about
I did
that,
it
and
again. I did it again.
and we always just have open conversations. That's important for me, that we do talk.
Yeah, and the key being the keeper of the memories is it's a role that comes with a responsibility because you are the person that will be able to inform them as they grow about, things about their parent that they didn't know. And that does come with a weight of responsibility. And I know what you were saying. I feel like I can feel him slipping through my fingers a bit. And when I try and grasp onto a memory, sometimes what I actually get is a photo because that's what I've got left is photos. And I'm funny enough, oddly enough, I was thinking about this and I was thinking, why can't I just recall him as he was? It's all photos, and I've not watched any videos yet. And that was my challenge for this year, was to try and watch some videos because the kids have said the same. They're missing the memories, and so I do need to kind of woman up and do this. But it is a very strange place in your grief. I'll be 6 years in March, and you you're a widow or a widower, and you have still lost your partner or your spouse. But when you say to people they died, and it's quite a large time ago, it's different, isn't it? You're in a different place, I suppose. And then people go, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry," and you sort of go, "Oh no, it's fine, I'm fine," but you're not fine. But it's just easier to say that than to delve back into it. And I know one of my friends said she just doesn't really know where she feels her identity anymore. She said, "I don't really feel like a widow anymore," but I am, and it's again, you're sort of thrust into another no man's land of not really knowing where you fit in the world. Um, does lead me to my next question, David, which was, do you think that you might meet somebody? Are you looking for somebody? Would you like a person in your life? How would Luke respond?
Well, I do have someone in my
You
life at the moment.
do? Oh,
Yes.
lovely. Oh, I'm really
Um,
pleased.
which this well, I mean, as far as the dating, trying to sort of go back on the dating scene, I think it was about uh 2019. I sort of tried, dating again. Didn't sort of work out. I mean, for me, it was
Different world, right?
well, strangely enough, I did not want to go back down the internet dating route. I thought I don't like
Oh, did
all this Tinder stuff and whatever. It's like no, 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 no. I want to try and meet people and do it the old-fashioned way or whatever because I don't particularly fancy doing it the new internet dating way. And I guess for me at that point is the way I looked at it was that I needed to be in a better place before I could sort of commit to trying to do anything like that. Which is why I know some people sort of dip their toe a lot sooner than that. But for me, it's like that's when it
very
felt more
personal,
better
isn't it?
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because obviously, and I like you said there, I mean, I knew it would be obviously it's going to have an impact on Luke, and that's sort of going to bring up stuff for him. So yeah, tried a little bit in 2019, didn't work out. And then what happened in 2020? So this is in lockdown. I was interviewed on another podcast, and had a discussion on that, and a couple of episodes later from the episode that I was in, there was a widow who had been interviewed, and I guess like what you and John have done is sort of set up a support group. That podcast, I don't know if I can mention the name or not, but anyway, but
You can, of course. What is it?
Widow We Do Now.
Yeah. Oh, yes,
So
I know that one. Yes, I do know that. Yes.
I was
Are they
interviewed on.
American?
Yes, Anita Mel, yeah.
Yes.
So
yes, I do know them. Actually, yes, I've had some contact with them.
They had created this support group, and Karen, who was the widow who had been interviewed a couple of episodes later, may had mentioned something that she was sort of going through, and I just happened to sort of message her and sort of say, "Oh, yeah, I encountered that problem. You might want to try this, you might want to try that, or whatever, and see if that maybe sort of helps." And I suppose then from just a few emails back and forward turned into some telephone conversations, turned into FaceTimes and stuff like that. And well, it was really strange. It was because we didn't actually get on to our first date, as it were, was delayed because of the whole lockdown and sort of COVID thing. So although we started talking in 2020, and we're talking to each other on a daily basis, we didn't actually get around to having our first date until September the following year, once restrictions had eased
No
on travel.
way.
Yeah.
Oh, well, at least you knew each other quite well.
Yeah, but what I should say though, is what makes it a challenge though is that she lives in Canada, so she's Canadian.
Oh no! Oh, David, you haven't made this easy for yourself, have you?
Hey, love isn't easy, is it?
It is not.
Yeah, so basically, we're trying to sort of work through with a long distance relationship at the moment, which brings its challenges.
Have you been to Canada?
I have, yes, yeah. And she's back over again in a month's time. So.
Oh, that must be exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, well, will you take a picture and send it to me and show me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to.
But she, I guess the thing is, with her being a widow as well, we've both been able to support each other. As you know, there are 4
it's really
people,
valuable, isn't it?
There are 4 people in our relationship. 2 of them are alive and 2 of them are dead. But there'll always be 4 people.
Yeah, we say this. Yeah, alive wife and dead wife. You going to roll with that, do you think? Oh, David, I'm really pleased to hear that you have got some happiness and that you're making such a valuable contribution in the world, because as you've said, you've talked on podcasts about your grief, and I think a male voice talking about grief is incredibly valuable. And the fact that you're working in the grief arena, volunteering for crews, which is such a commendable thing to do. And the weight of knowledge that you must have now, having been through it must... I always felt with counsellors, particularly in the early days, what do you know? You don't know what I'm going through. And I think to have that level of empathy and understanding is really helpful. And I think it speaks volumes about who you are as a person, that you've chosen to channel your loss into doing something positive back out into the world. And you're running as well, is that right? You run?
I run, yes. There was a whole big health thing that sort of came out of...
You lost a lot of weight, didn't you? Did I see this in your application?
Yes, yeah. That was, I guess, what I haven't touched on was the trap I fell into. I know you talked about your chicken and wine days.
Chicken and wine?
I sort of, for me, I call it was comfort eating, emotional eating, whatever you want to sort of say. But it was
chicken.
Well, for me, it was I call it screensaver mode, where I would just sort of sit after I sort of sortedly look out for bed and stuff like that. That time I would just sit and watch TV, and I was just not really doing anything apart from eating crisps and peanuts. And basically I put on several stone in weight just over a couple of years. I then got a health scare. They thought possibly it was cancer, which scared the hell out of me. And I'm thinking, right, okay, as it was just a cyst. It wasn't cancerous. But that was enough, right? Okay, look, I've got to do something about this. So I basically wanted to get myself healthy, and so I sort of lost 7 stone. And
7 stone. 7 stone. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've put a little bit back on, but I'm still working, to get that back off again. But for me, running was something that, okay, after I'd lost a certain amount of weight, I thought I also want to try and get fit before I'm 50. And so done the Catch the 5K thing. Never ever thought I would be a runner, but I've ran, well, I haven't done a marathon. I've run half marathons. I've raised money for the hospice, which was my way of giving back.
As I may have mentioned, David, I have completed a marathon.
Yes,
I do like to get this into as many episodes as possible, very slowly and not terribly competently, but I did it. But I now, as you probably know, I run for my mental health. But I have to say, the kind of impact on your physical, I'm wearing shorts. I think I used to wear shorts because it does change your body almost without you realizing when you're not running for that purpose, and you're running. There's a book called Outrunning Your Demons, actually, which my dad got me, and it's brilliant. It's all about people who turn to running to process trauma or addiction and things. And I find it just is a really quick blast of like therapy. And if I know that I wake up and I've got that kind of I hate gremlin feeling, a quick 20-minute run will blast it through. Not always, and not always massively effectively, but it's better than being in screensaver mode. And I love this. I'm going to do an Instagram post with screensaver mode because I've never heard it called that, and it's exactly what it is. You're just in standby mode. You don't. I didn't eat because I drank, but it so could have been the food. It didn't really matter what it was. I just needed something that would distract me.
I mean, it was something. The way I've said about it, there is that, as you know, is that feeling of loneliness and emptiness. And I guess for that brief moment, we all like our food, and for that brief moment when you're eating that, it's just giving you something that sort of makes you feel better. For that little brief moment.
It's dopamine.
Yeah.
Because as you know, John had a very close call with COVID, and that was enough to give him the impetus to change his lifestyle. And he no longer drinks either. He didn't have a problem with drink, but he kind of joined in with Leave the 100 Days as support and didn't miss it, so he's not gone back. But yeah, he took up exercise. I've even had him in a couple of yoga classes, believe it or not. And it does make you reevaluate your life, and the fact that you are actually that realize, oh shit, I'm the only one left. I've got to get my shit together now.
Yeah.
And well done you, because you have taken back control of your life. And essentially, we talk a lot on here about it not being something that somebody else can do for you. You're the one that has to do it, and it looks to me very much like you have, and I think that's admirable. And I think, I don't know, Luke, but it sounds like you're a brilliant dad, and that you're doing all the right things, even when you're not doing the right things, because we're not perfect. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and so much of what you say is so on the same page as where I am, and it's lovely when you talk to somebody like, yeah, I think that as well. And once again, I'm always really grateful when we get male voices on, because men don't tend to talk as openly about their grief and their experience of it. So thank you for doing that. I really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Yeah. No, I'm always open to talk about it.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And I think that's probably it for today, because I've had you for, we've got an hour and 15 minutes. So these are getting longer. I'm just getting nosier and nosier and more interested in people. Well, thank you, David. Thank you so much for coming on today and for talking so eloquently and openly about your experiences. And I know that our listeners will gain so much from it. We always get a load of response when we have a male voice on, and thank you. And I do hope that you will stay in touch and we'll continue to communicate, because we chat through Instagram messages, and I would love to see a picture of you and Karen. And I wish you so much happiness in your life, for all of you.
No, thank you very much. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much. And for everybody else, you guys take really good care of yourselves, and we'll be back on Friday. John and I will be discussing this episode. So if you've got any questions or anything you wanted to add to the discussion, please let us know. But for now, look after yourselves.